In June 2019, the largest custom build in Lloyd Stevenson Boat Builders' 34-year history commenced.
It's a dream project for LSB here. It's our 66th boat that we've built.
A project combining the best of modern techniques and materials with ages-old craftsmanship skills passed down through generations of boat builders.
I'd have to say early on when Luke walked in my office and said I had an inquiry on this 24-metre yacht built out of 6-skin timber, I just about told him it was spam. Who would build a boat of that size in timber? You know, it'd be lovely to do, but who would do it? Cut a long story short, here we are now with contract signed and deposit paid and the frame standing up and the boys starting to plank the boat.
This unusual build, by modern standards, began with the timber hull made from Alaskan yellow cedar, built in a combination of strip and diagonal planking over temporary frames, and built upside down for this first stage, which would last well into the forthcoming months and be witness to some world-changing events.
This is a big volume explorer yacht, really, designed for adventuring in remote places and high latitudes.
Timber's very quiet. It's good insulation properties. Going up in the cold weathers, it's going to be great for that. It is strong. You know, you're going to sail offshore and not at no worries at all.
It's also got a Kevlar skin on the hull for impact resistance around ice pack, etc. So, I mean, the boat will be almost literally bulletproof.
But just what is it about the design that's got everyone so excited?
The construction of it is such that you would have thought you'd never see it again. Strip plank and then 4 layers double diagonal, then another strip plank and glass on the outside is really stuff we would have done 30, 40 years ago.
There's not a lot of boats around the world being built like that anymore, so it really gives a chance for some of our senior guys to pull out some of the skills that they haven't used for a wee while, and the opportunity for some of our young guys to learn some new skills that they probably wouldn't get the opportunity to do at any other yard.
Everybody on our floor is wanting the opportunity to work on it. It's going to be a project you look back 15 years, 20 years down the track and you're going to say, I was there when Lloyd built that boat. It's got a great feel about it already.
And at this early stage, is anyone worried?
This is the biggest boat we will have built. It will pose some challenges, but all these full custom projects pose challenges, and that's really what excites us and gets us out of bed in the morning.
It's going to keep a bunch of guys busy for 18 months, 20 months. It's a pretty exciting project for us.
With nobody able to predict in June 2019 what was about to dramatically impact every person in the world, work began confidently on the labour-intensive process of diagonal cross-planking the hull. Eyes on the horizon for a Christmas 2020 launch.
The boat was designed to be solo sailed, hence the ketch rig. Ketch rig allows you to have large surfaces but smaller sails, so each sail is easier to manage.
From the drawing board of Switzerland's Arnaud yacht design, the 23.9-metre yacht is intended for the harshest of challenges and conditions.
It has to be able to sail in very, very hard conditions. The deck configuration makes it very safe. It's not quite as light as carbon fiber, but it's much more cruising friendly.
From a love of the materials and the build process, Arnaud's would continue to play a key role in the production of this boat, inspiring the craftspeople at Lloyd Stevenson Boat Builders into some of their best work.
Wood is always something that you can relate to as a material. It's organic, it's natural. Wooden boat, you get an emotional bond. No matter how many boats you've built or designed or been involved in, it's always a discovery, it's always a revelation. Most people end up talking with their boat, especially if it's a wooden boat.
With the timber planking completed, the hull was then covered in a tent, and preparations for applying the composite outer skin began. A highly developed eye for detail was needed to smooth out the timber's natural imperfections. Then the layers of Kevlar and e-glass cloth were carefully applied. Vacuum infused to ensure the Kevlar and e-glass was properly bonded to the cedar hull, an important consideration as she'll be exploring high latitudes and remote places. The hull was constructed without a bow, as a specialised crash bow was to be added later. The crash bow was specifically designed to crumple in the event of an impact, ensuring the hull stayed watertight. Here it is being shaped. With this work underway and over on the other side of the factory floor, another team had begun work on construction of the main deck and superstructure. By December 2019, 7 months into the build, and as first reports were being heard of a viral pneumonia in Wuhan, China, the timber and composite hull was completed. Once the hull is completed, it's time to turn it right side up so the temporary frames can be removed and work on the interior bulkheads, structures and systems can commence. This meant a delicate crane maneuver was required to turn the hull over without compromising its integrity. Hull turning is always an exciting milestone. The size of this hull made this process just a little bit nerve-wracking. And then, with momentum on the build in full swing,
this is a COVID-19 announcement.
New Zealand and much of the rest of the world was plunged into a period of lockdown as the COVID-19 virus spread rampant across the globe.
Like most Kiwi businesses, we were pretty heavily impacted by the lockdown. It meant that we basically couldn't work for 5 weeks. We found ourselves back here on the 28th of April, level 3, with some measures that needed to be put in place to keep our guys safe.
With workplaces partially back in action, work on the build got going again, whilst over on Auckland's North Shore, the keel's lead bulb was about to be poured at Mike Lee's castings. A week after the pour, the lead had cooled and set, and the completed bulb was delivered to the factory.
Here's the bulb that was cast about 2 weeks ago, and it's out of the mould now, and it's ready for its next stage, which will be to install the keel fin into this area here. But that stage it'll weigh about 15 tonne.
With the COVID-enforced delay, it was all hands on deck to try and make up some of the lost time. 2 months later, and the deck and superstructure was now ready to be lifted into position and joined to the hull. A few adjustments made for a perfect fit, and we finally see the first glimpse of the final form the boat will take. With no time to waste, work began on fitting out the interior and galley, as well as test fitting vital pieces of equipment. Work also continued on the outside with a lengthy and laborious shaping process called fairing.
A lot of boat builders talk about making your line fair. It can be quite hard to define, and it's a subjective thing almost. There's a certain amount of joy in making a beautifully shaped object. To follow a nice true line is quite critical to most boat builders.
In October of 2020, the team from Hall Spars and Rigging came on site to make their final precise measurements for the masts they would be supplying. These carbon fibre masts were made at their factory in West Auckland. Epoxy-coated sheets of carbon filament are wound in a cross-hatch pattern before being covered in a heat shrink tape to compress out the air during the later heating process. Points for mountings and fittings are then created, and all pieces are tested for fit before the mast goes into the autoclave for curing. Once cured and then painted, the accessories are all mounted to produce the final masts. Meanwhile, back in Highbrook, Pete and the build team were at full steam ahead, working remotely with the designer in Switzerland.
We're about 2/3 of our way through the build. The hull's complete, the deck has been put on. Now we're starting into the interior in earnest, getting that all fitted out. The morale is pretty high. Everyone's working hard and looking forward and can see the finish of it this year.
But despite everyone's hopes and hard work towards the end-of-year launch, the global pandemic hadn't quite finished with New Zealand as the dreaded Delta variant hit hard and Auckland entered an unprecedented 107-day lockdown. Despite this further setback and with further lockdowns looking increasingly unlikely, in November of 2021, it was back on the tools for another push to make up lost time. Work on the interior fit-out continued, and with the fairing and surface prep work finally complete, by May of 2022, it was time to apply a polyurethane top coat to the hull. The hull was checked for level and the waterline marked. Flooring and the final install of cabinetry followed, until at long last on the 13th of September 2022, the 23.9 metre Wind Spirit rolled out of Lloyd Stevenson Boat Builders on its way to Half Moon Bay Marina. After a project build time of almost 40 months, the lead keel was installed. The mast was stepped, and the traditional celebratory champagne bottle was used to christen her. An emotional launch day for all. Yet, has it ended up as everyone had dreamed?
Well, I said before that the boat would have its own character and personality, and I think it really does have it. From outside, it's a very robust boat. It looks a bit like a tank. Anything the ocean will throw at us, we'll be able to take. And inside, you come down into a very homely and soft and sweet and welcoming interior. This is something I like. There was so much attention to detail. There is such love for high quality, so much dedication. It's just absolutely amazing. It is, and I think of it, it's not just for the camera, it's for real.
Leave a fair bit of a hole in our lives because it's dominated them work-wise for the last 3 years. You can't help but feel some grief about the boat departing, but it's alive and we'll be following it with great interest as it tackles on the world's oceans.